Welcome to Ask SAR. Today's question is, what do you mean by sex? We've been talking about how the program talks about sex, relationships, and identity. So today we're going to define what we mean by sex. Now you might think this is a simple thing, but it's not. Sex is a simple word which is used to define a whole lot of very complicated ideas. Some of the basic ones. So people talk about sex, and they actually are talking about the act of sex, the act of having sex. Now, most people think, oh, the act of having sex, that means your basic penis and vagina sex. But again, it's a lot more complicated than that, because sex, the act of sex, has a huge amount of variation. There are hundreds and hundreds of different sexual acts. If you're curious, we may cover that in a later program. We talk about sex in terms of biology. And we can talk about that biology in a number of different ways. One of them is chromosomal sex. You may have learned in biology class that humans have pairs of chromosomes, which we call sex chromosomes. We typically learn that there's XX for female and XY for male. That's somewhat of a simplification. There are actually 6 basic chromosomal sexes: XX, XY, XXX, XXY, XYY, and OX. There are some others beyond that, but they are fairly statistically improbable. So a little bit more complicated as the whole topic of sex is. We also talk about biological sex in terms of phenotypical sex. Phenotypical sex is another way to think of naked sex. If you're looking in a mirror and you see yourself naked, you're looking at your phenotypical sex. If you're lucky, there's somebody else standing next to you also looking at you naked. That works too. Phenotypical sex is, again, it's not just male-female, it's not just boy-girl. Phenotypical sex is a long spectrum of possibilities. We can look at this side as the most masculinized man, or this side as the most feminized woman. But there are people who fall all along that spectrum, and there are even people who sort of take a little bit from here and a little bit from here and maybe a smidge from there and mix them all together. So is it simple? No, but that's what makes it fun. A third way of looking at sex is sex expression. That is, when you're looking at me watching this video, you look at my clothes, my hair, my makeup or not, what I'm wearing, how I'm acting, what my voice sounds like. Sex expression is what we call clothed sex. It's what you see when you look at another person. Now, again, that's about presentation. And it has a huge spectrum of things. There's a wide variety of clothing people wear, ways they talk, mannerisms, the whole gambit. And you can pick from bits and pieces of all these different things to build one single expression. So you might have already guessed that the biological sex and the sex expression don't have to match. They can be completely different. They can be the same. There can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's complex, and that's what makes it wonderful. As a quick note, people often use the word sex and gender interchangeably, and they're not. Sex in that case is about biology. Gender is about identity. It's a very internal state, and we'll probably talk about that again later. So sex, not a simple word, thousands and thousands of uses. You've been watching Ask SAR. I'm Sar Cermick. If you like this program, great. If you think somebody else could use it, please share it. If you want to hear more from us, subscribe. We do this every week. If you have questions, and I really do love your questions, please keep them coming, leave them in the comments, and we'll try to answer them in a later episode.